Hello, this is Kirk Davis, the Executive Director of Camps. I'm here today with Randy and Tom of GMN Logistics. We are going to be talking about freight. And I want to introduce you to these members of Camps because I think you've come to Camps at a time when the topic is freight and the topic is freight processes. But you've come to us at a time when I think freight has been in the news maybe more than ever because of supply chain interruptions, inflation that's hit all of us, and rising costs. But fuel costs have taken, I think, maybe some of their biggest toll on freight costs and freight processes. So welcome, Randy and Tom. It's good to have you here. So Randy, just so the audience knows, and they can see your name here in the bottom, but
yeah, and I'm Randy Wiskerson, and I appreciate that introduction, Kirk. And Tom, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, I'm Tom Morris, Randy's partner, and Kirk, I really appreciate you providing this opportunity for Randy and I to talk a little bit about what we do at GMN Logistics and the freight industry as it relates to manufacturers in the Northwest part of the country.
This is excellent timing. So glad to have you here. So go ahead and tell us about.
Thanks, yeah. Well, maybe the best place to start, Kirk, for you and your members is that Tom and I have learned quite a bit about the freight business, and we've had many experiences. And one of the things that Tom and I have come across over and over again is the fact that many business leaders don't understand freight, and therefore they don't manage it well. And to go a little bit deeper on that, if your business or if manufacturers are handling freight as an event rather than a process, that is problematic. Manufacturing companies particularly need to understand that the freight process doesn't start when the product gets to the back door. It actually starts at the time the raw materials are sent from your suppliers until that product reaches your customer's dock. And that is a kind of a common thread that Tom and I have seen. It's not indicative of every manufacturing company, but many companies end up in that space where the product is at the end of the production line, and now what do? We call a broker up, or we have a 3PL jump in and try to get that shipment there the most cost-effective way. But Tom and I have worked hard to put together a complete process, and we're going to get into some of the details of that as we move along. But that's a good common launch pad for us to get into this conversation because, and I guess I'll just say this in closing, and I'll turn it over to Tom, but a lot of companies, manufacturing companies, look at freight as just a rate game, and rates are only a part of the overall process.
By the way, Randy and Tom, you guys you didn't start doing this last year. You've been doing this for a while. So I think it's good for people to kind of understand where you're coming from.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point, Kirk. Believe it or not, Tom and I both come from the printing world, and what I like about my partner is we're both fixers. We're both solution type guys. We like to look at something that's not working well and put together something that's going to help somebody. And that's really how we got started in this whole business. And I'm glad to be working with Tom from that perspective.
Yeah, we have been at this. Thank you, Randy. I agree. We've been at this for a number of years, and actually looked at it from a couple of different perspectives, from the standpoint of not only the shipper, but the supplier, as Randy mentioned earlier, the person on the floor that's moving the material from the warehouse to the dock, packaging it up, shipping it out, to the CFO, who is worried about the numbers and are the dollars there. And you mentioned earlier, Kirk, the fuel. Is my fuel rate the same as what Joe's fuel rate is down 2 miles from me? And is my package getting there as soon as Joe's is getting to his client? And how does an organization within Camps compete with organizations that are over on the East Coast or in the Southwest. And so a lot of those variables that come into the process, as Randy mentioned, those are some variables that maybe your members aren't thinking of because they're so focused on the day-to-day. They're so focused on manufacturing the part and getting the part out the door that they're just overwhelmed with what might come from understanding those pieces to the process. So that's what Randy and I do. We listen, we ascertain, we use analysis, use the data that's being created, and then come back with maybe some ideas as to how you can change your story. Maybe some ideas as to, as Randy mentioned, where technology could fit. Maybe some ideas as to, what changes you could make internally to affect the external variables that are in play. So it's also a process on our side where we have to go through a number of different steps to make sure that there's some things that are working, obviously, and then there's some things that aren't working. And so we once again look forward to working with you and your members to assist them in this process.
Well, Tom, something we as manufacturers understand is lean processes, right? So you're looking at the opportunity, and I was very impressed that you're not just talking about rate savings, but you're looking at how to lean out that whole freight incoming and outbound process, and like you said, seeing the opportunity. So it's not only it's getting the right freight on the right mode of transportation, to the right carriers. It's a service actually to the carriers as much as it is to the manufacturers, is my understanding.
That's true. And in fact, many of your members know that if you're talking about lean, you're talking about one of the aspects of, value stream mapping, right? And so that's something that we look at very closely is where is the value in every step of the process, and what steps could be cut out, and how much value would you generate if you cut those those steps out. So those are absolutely, this is a lean type of industry that we're in as far as the management of freight, and no part of the freight industry, whether it's ocean freight or all the way down to shipping one package in a parcel, is void of it. Everything touches every aspect of that value stream map, and that's what we do. So we'll take a look at your process and we'll help you lean it out. And in some cases, we've had experience where clients don't want to necessarily lean it out as much as they could, because once again, they don't want to bite off more than they can chew. And that's fine with Randy and I. We like to, work slowly, methodically, and make sure that we're moving our clients in the right direction.
I like that.
Yeah, I would add one thing, not to give away my age, but I've been around for a long time and I've been involved with lean principles and tools. And I think historically it's interesting that most companies got involved with lean when it came to the manufacturing process. But as time went on, people started to look at all the different functions in the company as a process, whether it was accounting. I've been through lean on the sales side. And it's kind of a natural for Tom and I to use that approach on the freight side and the shipping side. Tom and I interface with a lot of consultants, and we even work with consultants out there that never thought about looking at the freight process or the freight side as a process. So it's only when you do that you can break it down into pieces and then address each one of those pieces, like Tom said, and really, go at it and do what's best for the overall process and not just one step of the process.
So I'm kind of bringing up an objection that I've heard before, and I'm sure you've addressed this, but a lot of times with inbound freight, because you talked about the process starting from when they order the raw materials, but with inbound freight, a lot of times they're saying that's just included in my price. The vendor takes care of that. I don't have to worry about the inbound shipping because that's just taken care of. But that's not necessarily right.
No, I think, again, experientially, Kirk, this is what we see. It's never good to have your freight costs bundled with the cost of the product, because what your supplier is most likely doing is he's setting up the freight, he's marking the freight up, and he's making money off of your inbound freight. So the first thing that Tom and our suppliers or our partners would do is we would try to unbundle that just to make sure we understand how that looks. And more often than not, what I just said is actually true. We'll find savings on the front end as well as on the back end, because of how, I mean, people are trying to make money wherever they can. And the last thing a manufacturer should have to worry about is a supplier making money off of their inbound freight.
Yeah, I think.
Yeah, and
Yeah, go
Kirk,
ahead.
I would add to that and say that what's a big factor in our business and what we find is transparency.
Yeah.
And as Randy mentioned, a lot of times what happens is the supplier is not providing the transparency that you would have if it was your truck that they were shipping those materials on. And so consequently, we see taking that transparency that isn't present with the supplier, providing the transparency to the supplier, because it's your truck line that you're running, to the supplier, and thereby managing better the process from your perspective, not from the supplier's perspective. And so once again, giving you the kind of the ability and the vision to see what really is what's really happening with that raw material that's coming in. And because a lot of times, let's say you're competing with the guy on the East Coast, you're in Seattle, and the supplier is in the Midwest. Well, who knows if the supplier is putting you ahead of your competitor on the East Coast? But if it's your truck and you're deciding when that truck picks up that item, then you're in control of it. And that's really, really important. As you mentioned earlier, it's important regarding all the different things that are going on today that you don't seem to have control over. At least with this, you would have control over that.
Well, Tom and Randy, it seems like to me, part of what you're bringing here to manufacturers is technology. And I think that's been the game changer, because you talked about this transparency. That wasn't always easy before, but I think it's a lot different today.
Yeah, there's tools out there right now called TMS software systems, transportation management software systems. And I know a lot of manufacturers have them. I'm not sure they're always using them adequately, but you'd be surprised, or we're surprised at how many manufacturers still don't have any technology on the back end, and they're using a whiteboard to say there's a shipment ready and go out and find a carrier for that. But I think we all know, if we put our management hats on or whatever, when you have data and you have historical data, you can make better educated decisions. You can find trends. You can look at things that are going on that are going to help all of us, and especially them, understand their freight picture better and make better decisions, and at the end, drop more profitability to the bottom line.
I'm so impressed that you went there. That's really, I think, what gets our attention about this freight equation, because there is hidden profits for the company by taking a more active control over this process, I believe.
Yeah,
absolutely. There's hidden profits. Randy and I, when we look at the process, there's two sides to every coin, correct? So one side is cost savings. The other side is profitability, and the ability to, as Randy said, manage the data from the standpoint of knowing which bucket you're looking at and which bucket you're trying to change. So here again, the economies of scale that are in play when you have the data are vast. So you have the ability to then compete with somebody that has access to maybe 3, 5, 6, 10 carriers, as opposed to, as Randy mentioned, the person on the floor picking up the phone and calling a carrier or calling a 3PL and saying, I need this load picked up. It gives you so much more vision and, as I mentioned earlier, transparency to make good decisions because you have more inputs.
That's nice. Yeah.
Yeah. One of the things that we should make clear too, Kirk, is that Tom and I, from a solutions provider standpoint, we do deal with all modes of freight, whether it's parcel, LTL, full truckload, ocean, intermodal, air freight, drayage, whatever. So we are, I know it's an old adage, but I'd like to say that we're kind of a one-stop shop when it comes to that. And, one of the things that Tom and I have also found is that we have not found, in many cases, a provider that's good at all of them. And that's why Tom and I spend a lot of time interfacing with different providers, looking for who is the best in each one of those spaces. And then, bringing those partners in as we look at the process, bringing those partners in where needed and where they can provide the best solution to the manufacturers.
Now, I might be asking you a difficult question, but I would imagine a lot of manufacturers already have a system and a process. They've got their people trained. This is the way we do it. Now, if I bring GMN in, and is it going to make it more complicated? Is it going to make it harder? Because Tom, you're talking about, a TMS system and having more options. So how much more complicated does this get, I guess?
Actually, that's a great question, Kirk. I think it actually makes it simpler because before we ever bring anybody in, Randy and I really truly try to find out what is the story that's at that manufacturer, because everybody, just like everyone has a different fingerprint, every manufacturer has a different story. And so we want to understand what that story is as it relates to whatever aspect of freight that Randy mentioned. And it could be, it could run the gamut. So it could be, parcel, it could be ocean, it could be a mix of a whole bunch of different ones. So once we understand what the story is, and once we have the data to support the story, so once again, how many shipments are going? What are the shipments? What are the weights? What are, that kind of information? We can then go back and look at, okay, which author of the next chapter of your story do we want to bring in? Do we want to bring in, somebody to just talk about the LTL space, or someone to talk about the parcel space? But in doing that, we sit down with the client and we explain, this is what we understand your story to be, and we get their agreement. And we might miss something. For instance, somebody would be talking to us about what they think their issue is, which might be on the parcel side. And then all of a sudden we find out that there's actually other challenges when we're asking certain questions, and they say, oh, you know what, I didn't think about that, but we do ship a number of things LTL, or we do have a number of containers coming in, on the ocean. And then we can start to learn more about that story. And then we can come back to the business owner and say, okay, here's the part of the story that we really think we can help you with, and we can help you with now. And this is the group that we want to bring in and talk to you about. And if they're in agreement with it, then that's what we do. And once again, very simple, very easy, not a lot of, moving parts. It's just a matter of understanding who they are as a freight company and what their process is, and then where we can help.
So part of the story I wanted to get to is that things actually get better and things actually get easier.
Right. Yeah, the software, TMS software has advanced so much in the last couple of years. I mean, when if we get them set up with the right software, I mean, we're talking about everything from plugging in their rates, our rates, so they can do rate shopping. We're talking about printing off the bill of ladings, tracking. These tools are so advanced that even their customer service teams can tap into them and track a shipment and know exactly where that shipment is. Is it going to be there on time? Has it been delayed? And that's so much better than having a customer call and say, where's my shipment? And you have no clue. You got to go back to the 3PL, or you got to go back to whoever. But And, you know, and as technology is advancing now, they're actually putting trackers on trucks or whatever, so you can see exactly where the truck is en route to the end customer. And I think it's amazing. The auditing functions are part of that. All the pieces that were kind of all separate pieces are being combined into the better TMS software packages and making them really user friendly for the manufacturers and for the shippers.
And Kirk, I would add to that that every single one of our solution providers that we work with, they all have a team of people to support the shipper. So if there is ever a question, or if there's ever a situation where the shipper doesn't feel like they're getting the result that they want, they have a team of people at the solution provider that will stand up and they'll fight for them. So for instance, if there's a claim, the solution provider will fight the claim. If there's a late shipment, the solution provider, because they know how the business operates their freight, they know exactly, you know, what was put on the truck, how it was put on the truck. And so then there's no what ifs at the end of it all. And if there are, you've got tremendous support with our solution providers.
This is all such great news. And we're talking about control. We're talking about transparency. We're talking about ease, you know, and the way the technology makes things easier and better. But let's get down to the fun part, I think is the cost savings. Because I was looking on your website that, you know, 20 to 30% savings on shipping. And even though that's valuable, I think sometimes things you can do to shorten the lead time to a customer, whatever that is in the beginning or the middle or the end of the process, if you can improve those lead times to customers, that's a lot of times a very big competitive advantage.
I guess I can talk a little bit about the rate game. Again, Tom's and mine experience has been that a couple things. First of all, Tom and I know that a lot of the manufacturers out there are small to medium manufacturers, and there's obviously large ones too. But the smaller manufacturers, if they're trying to negotiate rates on their own, they're going to often find that they don't have the leverage to get the better rates. They're a small player, and therefore they're going to get played like a small player. And one of the things that obviously they would get with our providers is they'd be part of a bigger world with a lot more leverage to give them better rates. The other comical thing that Tom and I have seen is that, especially on the parcel side, every parcel provider is going to come into the manufacturer and say, we really appreciate your business. We're going to give you a 60% discount on your rates. And a lot of people fall for that, but the question you really have to ask is 60% discount off of what? 60% discount off of an already inflated rate? Because they'll drive right down the street and tell every one of their shippers they'll play that card. And I think that's one of the other benefits of a good TMS system software is you can rate shop. You may have a preference for your current carrier, but would it really hurt if you put your rates in against the rates that our providers can provide shippers? And hey, maybe your rates are good, but what if your rates aren't as good as some of the other ones? One of the other things you can turn around and do is go back to your preferred carrier and say, hey, listen, I've been looking around and I have an opportunity here to save 20% or 30%. We love you guys. We like you guys. Can you do anything on the rate side? So there's lots of different ways to come at the rates. And, I would say Tom and I would probably put the rates lower on the list. We try to get all the other process stuff, the technology and things in place first. But obviously, I think most shippers probably have rates at the top of their list, and they don't know how to negotiate or how to play the rate game.
Yeah, I think that's a great response. Obviously Randy's my partner, right? So, but I would add to that and say one of the things that we found over the last 2 years is the ability to educate the manufacturer on the ins and outs of the freight industry. So, so for instance, I'll tell you a story. My wife does all the shopping in our family. And she'll start at one store, but by the time she gets home, she's been to 4 because there's sales at all the different stores, right? So, and anymore, as you mentioned earlier, Kirk, it's so important to find a good deal. Well, if you're just shipping with one entity, if you have all your eggs in one basket, then you're being penalized. You're being penalized because there's other options out there. I mean, we've seen Amazon has done a wonderful job of providing people with options that weren't present 10 years ago. And so that's what we are doing, and that's what our mission is to provide your members with options so that they have the ability, they can educate themselves on the process, but then ultimately make their decision. As Randy said, they may have a current provider, a carrier that they really like. That's fine, but at least give yourself the chance to understand, all right, I like him, but now I'm going to vet him against these other options and see if I like him for the right reasons. Maybe there's more reasons to like that carrier, and maybe there's less reasons to like that carrier. So once again, just providing those options. And there's, Randy and I have looked far and wide. There's not a lot of people out there, if there's any, that are doing what we're doing. So we're really focused on the shipper, trying to help the shipper. And yet we're also the advocate for our solution provider, providing them with the right shippers that have the right challenges that really fit their the solutions that they have.
Well, that
I would like to add one other thing, Kirk, that to the rates too. When you talk about rates, you're given a shipping rate, but there's also a lot of hidden charges. If you start looking at things like accessorial charges, a lot of shippers make a lot of money off of accessorial or hidden accessorial charges, or the insurance game is another one. They're basically insure your product, and then when you have a claim, you got to climb Mount Everest to even get them to talk to you. And then if you can get a claim settled, you're only going to get a fraction of what you thought you were going to get. So, that's just another space that Tom and I have spent a lot of time in recently, trying to figure out. There's other providers out there, good providers that are going to want to pay your claim if you have some kind of incident or accident. So there's other angles or other things hidden in the rates too that your shippers need to be aware of.
Yeah, thank you. And, I think one of the advantages of having a conversation like this that's recorded and they can get to see you and know you. And I have been so delighted getting to know both of you. Our conversations have been, so filled with integrity, but so filled with knowledge, so just talking to you, you feel like you're talking to somebody very knowledgeable, but who's going to take your very best interests at heart. So if somebody watches this and they say, man, I'd like to just find out what you guys could do for me. You guys have kind of a step-by-step process, right? How does somebody get started?
So let me respond first by saying that we have really enjoyed our relationship with you as well, Kirk. Very impressed with what you and Camps are doing for your members. And they're very excited about, trying to grow that relationship and improve that relationship ongoingly. The easiest thing to do is to go to our website, gmnfreight.com. And there's a sign-on page where you can send us an email if you're interested. And what we'll do is we'll call you back directly. Both Randy and I like to be on all of our calls, and we'll set up a 15-minute phone conversation. Just get some high-level questions, ask some different things, understand your business a little bit better, and then ask you point blank, do you want to move forward? Would you like to learn more? We certainly have not found a client yet that we haven't wanted to move forward with. And then take the necessary steps. So we have a questionnaire that we send out that covers all the different modes of freight. And some questions can be asked or answered and some can't. And so we will, look to have another follow-up phone call to kind of dig into that and answer those questions that are either hard to answer from the manufacturer standpoint or need a little bit more in-depth, discussion. And then from that, we'll glean where we think it should go, what solution or solutions that we would provide to the shipper. And that's really the kind of the first three steps that we go through with all of our prospects.
Now, I'll ask you a more difficult question, but do manufacturers have to be worried about your fees? I mean, is this something when they look at the, what they could save versus what your fees are, is that going to be scary for them?
So the answer to that question is no. So we work with our solution providers and we get paid by our solution providers. So the cost savings is direct to the shipper, and our time is invested with the shipper on the basis of which solution provider we think is best. And so no, it's truly back to those first two buckets we talked about, cost savings versus profit center. We want to really focus on taking care of the shipper from those two perspectives, and the rest of it, we deal with on the solution side.
Wow. So they're not going to see a direct bill from you necessarily.
No.
You made that easy.
Well, Tom and I are big on transparency, and with all our providers and all our clients, we really have nothing to hide. I mean, we work hard to bring value to every one of our clients and bring value back to our suppliers or partners as well. So we have nothing to hide there.
It just sounds like win-win-win all the way around.
Right.
It really is. Yeah, Kirk, it really is. And what's one of the reasons why we're really excited about camps is because we understand that that's your mission. Your mission is to improve the membership value of your members. Mm-hmm. And the number of different, videos that you have access to or provide access to, and the different programs that you provide access to, those are the types of businesses that we want to work with. Somebody that's really, really looking to improve on themselves, improve for their employees, bring that value, to everybody that works so hard to, grow their company. And we really think it is a win-win all the way around. Everybody wins. And therefore, that's why transparency is so easy, because we can't waste our time worrying about something that's not a fit. And believe me, there's times that, companies have brought us challenges that our solution may not fit in the moment, but Randy and I will go out and find a solution. And if we can't find one, we'll be upfront and tell you, we've looked high and wide and we cannot find a solution for you. It's unfortunate when it comes to that, but we will do that.
That's awesome. Yeah, no, so I have to tell you, thinking back on our entire conversation, that the camps member, and this is what we want to do for them, is we want to give them a competitive advantage. And this puts them more in control, gives them transparency. It makes the process easier. They can really tune into the best practices of freight management, and they can find the very best solutions that, again, add value to their customer, by again, creating a better, freight process, maybe shorten their lead times, alleviate the problems that often come up. You talked about, claims and other, problems. Well, this can simplify that process and give them that leverage that maybe a bigger customer would have.
Right. Absolutely.
You guys have been great. Is there anything else you'd like our members of camps to know? I mean, this has been delightful. I think it's been informative. I think we've asked some pretty tough questions. You've had really good answers too, but is there anything else you'd like them to know?
No, actually, one of the comments that I would make for you, Kirk, and we would look to work with you on this, is just kind of getting an understanding as to your members' barometer on what they'd like to do and how they'd like to engage with GMN Logistics. Mm-hmm. Because once again, every one of your members is different. They all have different needs. They all have different challenges. And so to understand what those are at a very high level, I think would help Randy and I decide what's the best way to help you to kind of break that process down, the camps process. So I think that's what we would look to do in the future. But once again, please reach out over our website, send us an email, and set aside 15 minutes for Randy and I to get to know you and your process a little bit better, and then we can move on from there.
That's excellent. So I'll have all of your contact information, the website link, and ways to get a hold of you, all in the description of the video. And I want to thank you both for being here today, for explaining this to our camps members and to help them to see the real value and I think the real savings that they can experience through your program.
Great. Thanks for having us, Kirk. We are
Thank you.
Grateful.
Thank you.
Yep.